So I was really hoping to find a nice, big, juicy watermelon for this video, but given the time of year, it's really hard to find ones in season where I am. But luckily, we live in the age of Temu, where you can find high-quality watermelons from anywhere in the world at any time. And I've had it up to here with these bootleg Suikas.
The Suika Game, or the Watermelon Game. This Japanese falling fruit puzzle game has become a viral hit among YouTubers and Twitch streamers and fake-ass TikTok ads over the past month or so. Although on the surface, the game seems very easy and childish, mainly thanks to the baby sensory video aesthetic and car keys jingling in your face sound effects, at its core, the Suika Game is actually a very complex and addicting puzzle game. A few weeks ago, at the start of my Thanksgiving break from university, I was bored and finally decided to download the Suika Game from the Nintendo Switch eShop, and I was hooked pretty much right away. So, I have decided to justify the hours I have spent playing this silly watermelon game and not finishing my Spider-Man 2 video by making a quick video on this game in the meantime. I've spent a few handfuls of hours playing this game, analyzing its many intricacies, and I believe I've hit the point where I can now pass some of my Suika wisdom onto the people. We'll go through each of the 11 fruits in the game and talk about how pumped or anti-pumped you should be when you see them, and how best to handle each fruit as you try to get that sweet, sweet watermelon. On the surface, the cherry might seem like the least valuable fruit in the game. It's the smallest fruit and the furthest away from your watermelon objective, and matching a pair of cherries is only worth 1 point. But the cherry's small size actually makes it one of the most useful fruits. The cherry takes up the least amount of space and can slip between other fruits very easily. You can use the cherries as a sort of wedge to get fruits off the wall or try to manipulate their positioning. You can use the cherry's small size to burrow into areas that all the other fruits can't reach and help break up clusters of strawberries and grapes in order to get things progressing. The cherries are also small enough to where even if they are between some of the larger fruits, like the peaches or the pineapples, unless they're literally right between them, their radius usually isn't large enough to get in the way of these other higher value fruits from touching. The cherry goes into A tier. As a tool, the cherry can be incredible. When I think about what individual fruit is the biggest mover and shaker on the board, most of the time it's the humble cherry. The two things that keep it out of S tier is that obviously it's the lowest scoring fruit of the lot, and it's still possible for these to be found in annoying places that can block connections. These are your other two very low-level fruits, and they are not nearly as useful as the cherry. The strawberry can also be used as a wedge to get other fruits off of the wall, but most of the time it doesn't work nearly as efficiently as the cherry. Your main goal when you get one of these is to set them up in such a way that 1, they won't be in your way, and 2, they can be connected and reach the next stage of fruit evolution as fast as possible. Sometimes it can be okay to leave a cherry alone because they're so small that they're often benign. This isn't the case with grapes, and especially the strawberries. At least for me, these are the fruits that are going to be in the way of your larger fruit connections most of the time, so the best way to deal with them is just to level them up as soon as you can, or keep some kind of garbage pile if possible. For the strawberry, it's gonna get C tier. Of all of the fruits, these are the ones you're gonna spend the most time babysitting, making sure they don't end up in places they aren't supposed to be. For the grapes, B tier. They're much more manageable, but still not an ideal drop in most situations. When it comes to the cherries, strawberries, and grapes, always try to line them up so that they will combo into each other. The faster you can get to your next fruit, the better. Speaking of which... First off, what the hell even are these fruits? According to Google, they are decapon and persimmon? Are those even real fruits? This is clearly an orange, and this one is an orange with a tumor. I guess both of these fruits are in Pikmin 3, so they get a pass from me today. These are the two highest valued droppable fruits, and they sure do feel like it. When you get a persimmon, you know it's time to make some moves. I usually try to position my decapons and persimmons right on top of all the higher level fruits. I find it best to stack your peaches, yellow things, apples, and persimmons right up, and then once you finally get that last persimmon ready to drop, they all cascade down onto each other. It is so satisfying. I think the Decapon doesn't work quite as well because their smaller size doesn't allow them to sit quite as pretty as the persimmon does on the fruit that they combo into. The Decapon is going in B tier. You're usually happy once you get it, but it can be a little annoying to get in place. For the persimmon, I toiled between A and S tier for a while, but ultimately decided to put them in A tier. That's because you aren't always happy to get a persimmon. Most notably, once your fruit get way high up on the board, a single bad persimmon placement can be a death sentence. So those are all of our droppable fruits. Just to recap, we have the persimmon, almost always a good drop. It's a great gateway into your high level fruits. The cherry, an amazing tool for manipulating fruit movements in most situations. The Decapon, a perfectly manageable drop, good for getting combos moving. The grapes, not the best drop, but can be managed well. And the strawberries, can be useful to maneuver other fruits some of the time, but mostly you just want to get them evolved as soon as possible, and make sure they don't clog up your pathways. As a whole, your goal with your droppable fruits is to always keep an eye out for matches and ways to string connections together. You gotta start small in order to get your big boys, so make sure you manage them well, and especially with the cherries, strawberries, and grapes, try to keep their numbers in check. You'd be surprised how quickly a handful of those poorly placed fruits can ruin a run. Again, for the love of God, what is this fruit supposed to be? We clearly have an apple and a peach, but sandwiched right between them is this mysterious yellow circle. I've been calling it a honeydew, which honestly just feels more correct than I think actually is correct. I've heard other people call it a cantaloupe, a lemon, a grapefruit, but gosh darn it, nothing seems to fit this thing. Google says that it's a pear, which I wholeheartedly disagree with, but whatever, for the sake of this video, it's a pear. These are your entry-level, higher-level fruit, and especially in the early game, assuming that you understand the game's core mechanics, are quite easy to get to. But for their ranking, we also have to take into account their impact on the later stages of the game. The apple goes in A tier. It is both incredibly easy to get and easy to manage in terms of space when connecting it into the pear. The pear goes in B tier. Still easy to get to, but it takes up a bit more space, which can make it a tad more annoying to connect at times. Following along this line, the peach gets C tier. It's naturally a bit harder to get later on, takes up more space, and can be tougher to connect when you have a full board of fruit in the way. Again, in the early game, apples, pears, and peaches are quite simple and satisfying to get. Really just line them up and knock them down. But in the later game, if you haven't planned their positioning out carefully, they can cause some real trouble. Oh, speaking of trouble! Son of a bitch, the pineapple goes into F tier because it pisses me off. Seeing the pineapple is usually the first sign that is getting real. As you saw with the apple, pear, and peach, as you get to the higher levels of fruit, they obviously get bigger and harder to manage, and trickier to keep lined up in a nice way as to smoothly combo everything into each other. So you can probably imagine why the pineapple is so low. Obviously, the pineapple is larger and just more annoying when on screen. The pineapple is at this perfectly horrid spot on the circle of evolution where it's far enough along to be challenging to get in some situations, but not quite at the end like the melons and watermelons to be as satisfying to get when you get those. More or less, your main goal in this game is to get a watermelon. And to get a watermelon, you need to have created 4 pineapples. The challenge isn't getting the watermelon. The watermelon is the reward. The real challenge is getting 4 of these bastards to come together how you want them to. Do you know how many times I've gotten 2 frickin' pineapples so close to each other that their hairs touch, and I'm just like, come on, man, give it to me. Too many times. I haven't been this pissed off to see a pineapple since I learned about Hawaiian Pizza.
I'm telling you, man, they put pineapple on pizza. It's seriously messed up. Like, what were those Hawaiians thinking? First off, it doesn't taste good. It tastes like you're chewing a crunchy gummy bear on a cheese pizza. Number 2, that's SpongeBob's house. You really want iconic cartoon character Sponge Robert to be homeless? And number 3, an upside down pineapple is the symbol that swingers use to signal other swingers. You better make sure that all of those pineapples are right side up, otherwise you're gonna have some unwanted guests trying to get a slice of your pie, if you know what I'm saying. No, I have not been hearing voices, and don't even get me started on ham.
The melon shares a lot of similarities with the pineapple as to why it's annoying, but weirdly enough, it's more tolerable. So it's going in C tier. Yep, a whole tier above the stupid pineapple. First off, the melon is the final hurdle before you get your watermelon. It takes up a massive amount of space, but at that point, the difficulty is a lot more justified. And again, these melons are massive. So if you're able to get 2 of these bad boys on the board at the same time, 9 times out of 10, their sheer size will cause them to touch without much trouble. I can't explain why, but I tend to have more trouble getting those final 2 pineapples to touch than the final 2 melons. But when those 2 melons touch... oh boy! Yeah, the watermelon goes into S tier. Of course, the watermelon is ginormous and imposing, and once you get it, the amount of usable space you have to build fruit is essentially cut in half, but getting the watermelon, high scores aside, means that you've won the game. You got the Suika in the Suika game, and I've gotten the watermelon dozens of times now, and it is always satisfying.
So it is now a few days later, and thankfully our friends over at Amazon have come through with an apple. I mean, I guess that's technically 1/32 of a watermelon. I mean, think of it like this. If I get one more apple, I can have a pear. One more pear, and I can have a peach. One more peach, and I can have a pineapple. On second thought, I will just wait until summer to get a watermelon because I am not letting a pineapple into my house.